All right, welcome. This is Microsites, harnessing the power of the group module. Just a quick slide about myself. My name is scot.self. I'm a senior development engineer at Mobomo. I live and work remotely out of Birmingham. Like to visit the Atlanta Drupal camps when I can. It's the closest thing I can do. I've been married, I should have updated this, 20 years last week. Two beautiful children, a wonderful wife, patient, homeschools them somehow. I've got my bachelor's and my master's in French, and somehow ended up in Drupal. I'm sure not happened to anybody else out there. Any English majors out there, or history majors, right? Amateur musician, play bluegrass in town in Birmingham. Love the fish and the jam band scene. That's me on all the things. Scott with one T. That's the key. Been doing Drupal sort of about 10 years or so. I did a handful of touches to a Drupal 5 site or two before I really got into 6 and of course 7 and 8. Trying to pitch in as much as I can here and there, patches, and just being involved in the issue queue and whatnot. And I work for Mobomo. We are a digital agency that does elegant solutions to solve complex problems for our amazing clients. We are very much hiring, so if you would like to, please stop by. Make an origami bird, throw your name in the hat for the Legos, and just talk to anybody at the booth to see what's up with Mobomo. We work for lots and lots of big federal agencies, USGS, NASA, FDIC. You can see them up there more and more every day. Just a quick summary of where we're going from here. We're going to go through just a quick, super short definition of what we could consider a microsite. What does it need? Just some basic concepts of the module itself. Some sort of kind of bonus features. You'll get an idea of what I mean by that in a second. Just the basic configuration of the group module itself, group content and all that. And then a good old live demo. So, pray for me. And then a little section after the demo, I'll talk about some of the things that we've run into that you can kind of expect to have issues with and how to try and deal with them. So, what is a microsite? I thought it was pretty hilarious that I got this, that I chose this topic and I called it this at the beginning, whereas tomorrow I'll be in another talk where we're talking about buzzwords. And buzzwords that you should eliminate from your vocabulary this year. And guess what one of my slides is? Microsite. Along with, I don't remember the other ones. But so what is a microsite? Is it something that's just an overused buzzword, or is it actually really a thing? When it comes to just in my mind, the way I think of it, I just think of it as a page or even a set of pages that's just dedicated to a specific subject. So it may or may not be kind of separated off from the rest of the website. So you may, you'll see much clearer examples in a second. And also it'll typically have some sort of navigation that kind of keeps you in the context of that site, that microsite. I had a quick example here just of USGS stuff that we've built. So this is kind of the home page for the science systems, all the mission areas within USGS. And then, actually, no, that's not the home page. Home page is here. And so you have each one of these is a mission area. And so once you go into a mission area, you're kind of in this sort of microsite of ecosystems. Ecosystems has programs, data tools, maps, and all these things are still within the framework of ecosystems. So we're still just talking about ecosystems as I click through these side navigation items. So that's kind of what I think of as a microsite. So we built this one with USGS. So this is using Drupal 7 organic groups. But we are moving on from that into the wonderful world of D8. So what does a microsite need? Your typical kind of base functionality. What does it take to build something like that? obviously you need membership. You've got people that need to be added to, be able to join by some mechanism, or be invited to. There's actually a patch I'll link to down in a second. They're working on adding that in there. Your membership provides you access to the group itself, the group's content, being able to edit things, and it also has roles and permissions, which work in conjunction with Drupal roles and permissions to give you kind of a subset of permissions within the group type that you're a member of. That's a quick link to that patch that people are working on, trying to get sort of an invitation system where you can invite people to join groups. That's all that is. Another concept is important, obviously, is ownership. So if I'm a member of, in the example, that ecosystems page, if I'm a member of that ecosystems group, I should only be able to edit things within the ecosystems microsite. Their content, their homepage, all that kind of stuff. And maybe I'm a member in some other mission area too, and I can only access those two or whatever. So you have some sort of concept of managing entities, whether it be nodes, media assets, menus, and how they belong to the group, and kind of what the relationship with those external entities are to the group. Again, you may or may not need a situation where if I go to this microsite, I have no idea that there's even other microsites on this same Drupal instance. You may or may not need that. We're working on a project now where you absolutely do not want visitors to even know that there's other parts to the site. It literally feels like the entire installation of Drupal is just this little world. But behind the scenes, there's potentially hundreds of different groups that you're managing behind the scenes and their content. Another thing we're going to talk about is sort of templating and or customization. So kind of the idea being, we'll start with, you've got to have a menu. You got to have some sort of navigation for your group. You're going to want to put that somewhere on the page in a specific place. It's going to look a certain way. Maybe you have cool color customization like the Georgia.gov guy that just got out of here. You're going to want to be able to customize the group itself probably in some way, at least. Obviously, you'd be able to customize the description of the group and things like that. But you'd also kind of want to be able to customize where stuff shows up, what bits show up where and when. So we're going to talk about kind of 3 different approaches. And just real quick, there are, so using the layout builder, you can obviously set up your group or your group content with sort of templated setup using the layout builder. I got a 2-column thing here, I put this field here and this field here, I got a 3-column thing, then I put these 3 fields there, however, kind of using the basic layout builder core functionality. So you could have a bunch of individual fields, stick them on the page in a certain order. There you go. You can also use layout builder with something a lot more robust, which is what we're really going to dive into in the demo, which is, sorry, backing up a step, that's not what we're going to do in the demo. This is actually custom blocks, so like block types, a whole nother block type, and you might have just a simple hero banner block type, and that contains a paragraph, and that paragraph type has a title field, a subtitle field, a CTA, but all that you can create within Layout Builder, customizing your specific group or your content page and sticking it in the Layout Builder somewhere. This is actually the approach I went with for this particular demo, sort of a combination of 1 and 3, you'll see. But this is just using paragraphs really heavily, sort of saying, okay, we've got these types of paragraphs. One is, this, and it's almost like using Layout Builder in a way, where I have a 1-column, a 2-column. I might have different sizes, 1/3, 2/3, kind of 2-column situation, whatever. And then within those, allowing certain other paragraph types. It'll be really clear what I mean by all this in just a second. And again, you can use any combination of those, really. You could use all 3 of them together, which makes it even more powerful. So just quick basic concepts about the module. What does it do? How does it cover the requirements that we're talking about? Of what a microsite needs. The group provides you with a group entity. So it's a first-class object. It's fieldable, just like a node, just like a user. You get this new entity type as well, which is called a group content entity. And then what they call a group content entity in the group module, I'll explain a lot better in this next slide. But basically, it's a relationship entity to relate other entities to the group. So it's kind of like in between the two. So you got node, group content. And you can field it to describe the relationship that the group has to this entity without modifying the entity itself. Membership is the same way. It's an intermediate relationship between the group and the users that are members in the group. So having membership means that I have a group content or a group membership entity in between my user account and my actual group. Again, it's fieldable just like everything else. You also have roles and permissions for each group type you define. So you may have, we'll look at a screenshot in a minute, so I won't go into that too deeply right now. But obviously you see you've got your standard managed fields, managed form, managed display, plus you have this permissions and roles section. And you also have this content tab. We're going to go through each of those really quickly. Just to recap kind of the structure of what I was talking about, this is a chart that I sort of borrowed from Mike and Ella. And so you've got the kind of the middle of your world is your group. And kind of outer edges, you have these nodes or node types that are potentially related to your group, as well as your users. So how do we get them connected to them? Well, we get our intermediate relationship entities, which are the ones that matter. From the perspective of group and building a site, microsite based on groups and relationship entities, those are the ones that matter. Because what's really happening is this node, that node, when I create this node, and we'll look at this again a lot closer in the demo, it exists outside of the group. It doesn't have any knowledge of the group itself. But what you want to present to your visitors is this relationship entity, because we can define better with the roles and permissions. Does the user who's visiting have access to view this node through the lens of this group? And think of it that way. It's almost like you're giving them a window to look at this node, but it also has, curtains and shutters, which is our fields on the content, the group content itself. So you can add additional fields to these yellow guys to describe the relationship, right? I have yet, you'll see the one thing I know we've been doing is on every site I've built with groups so far is menu links. So a menu, you want to link the group content entity, not the node itself. Because again, your whole point is the permissions and kind of restricting who can do what, who can see what, and the nodes don't accomplish that. You'll see a lot clearer as we go through. Quick list of critical helpers. These are some modules that provide important plugins or functionality that we absolutely, in my mind, are critical. Hopefully, eventually become maybe even part of group core. We'll see. Got to have a group menu. Talk about some of the challenges getting that to work in a minute. Group media is a separate module as well. So just like on the previous slide where you have nodes or users, you might have menus. And again, the menus exist independently of the group, but we're going to look at the menu or that media asset through the lens of that group. Same with taxonomy. There's a group taxonomy module. You can have taxonomies that literally exist just for a certain group to use, to make use of. We also have this great group domain, which we actually had to write for the project that we're working on currently, which integrates the domain module with groups. So I can, you'll see in a second on a screenshot, I can integrate and say this group's homepage URL is site1.example.org. Quick honorable mention, some other ones that are really helpful. Menu link, can't at this point you really can't get around using. So luckily it's pretty stable. There's a couple patches that we always have to apply that'll eventually make their way into the module itself. But there's no menu integration with the group or even the group content entity, so you've got to use a menu link field right now. Block visibility group module is really handy, specifically because it has lots of additional conditions that you can use. Group integrates already with kind of the base block functionality, so you can see, I only want to show this on this group type. But if you want to get more complex, which actually has come up a lot for us in this project, as far as visibility rules, this is really super handy because you can combine multiple rules. There's some rules in there that it provides that aren't available in the core block visibility stuff. When I say bonus features here, some of this stuff is absolutely critical, but it's bonus in that it's not in core. There's some stuff that's in progress. There's things that you may want to try, but that's just a way to group these together. So we've got, the first thing here is unpublishing groups. There's, in group core, there is no concept of a published or unpublished group. So there's a patch here in this issue. There's actually multiple patches you need to get you a published checkbox, basically. It also adds permissions for unpublished and published distinctions. There is also the revisions. So by default, the groups are not revisionable. There's a set of patches that are on their way into group core right now, and they're very stable. We've been using them for almost a year, the project we're working on, so very stable. And it also handles sites with existing groups and kind of provides revision, updates to the existing groups so that it handles it. And that also makes it where content moderation will work, so that's super handy if you're going to do workflows. So the ability to administer users by group role. This is a little tricky to explain, but I'm just going to read it just because that's the best I can do, I think. So core group permissions are not robust enough to support users adding members or editing existing memberships without being able to upgrade their own access. So basically, if I am a member of this group at all, and you give me the ability to manage members, I can manage members. So I can edit my own membership, not my user account. Remember, you're talking about the intermediate relationship, group membership. I can edit, and I can give myself admin privileges to the group, basically. So this one was really important to get right for security reasons, obviously. This is one that's gotten a lot of attention too over the last little while. Easily managing the membership of an entity within a group. So I want to say this entity, just say it's a node, just for simplicity. It is a member of group 1. Well, now I want to add it to group 2. I have to go through this, you'll see in a second. It's kind of a convoluted process to add it to a second group. But this provides a field that you can manage the entity's memberships in groups, along with any customized fields which go along with that relationship. Right, so when you first create nodes, if you're entering them as in the context of a group already, you're saying I'm going to add a new node to this group, it automatically kind of hides that field for you because you just don't need to be bothered with that idea when you're creating that. There's the patch. It's still very much in progress, but people are starting to use it. And the final little bonus thing here is domain group, which again I said we mentioned we had to build for this project we're on now, which essentially just lets you use the domain module at the group level. So you can kind of set kind of how well you can see that. But the main thing is at that very top field, you set the host name to whatever the name of the group is. and you can actually set a site name and a slogan that's specific to that domain. So rather than just having your one Drupal-wide site name, slogan, email address, you actually also have custom error pages, so 43404, and you also have your patterns for aliases. So it's pretty cool. Okay, quick. This is going to be pretty quick, this little chunk here. We're just going to go through how do I turn it on, what do I click, that kind of stuff. So obviously you got to turn on the group module, but also group node gives you that relationship entity to the nodes. Group membership comes by default with group. Click add, you get this top level item in your menu, groups. You add a group. Oh wait, there are no group types. You have to add a group type. Duh. So let's define a new group type, add a group type. Okay, so if I'm defining a new group type, excuse me, I've got a bunch of fields here. Obviously, give your group type a name. You can give it a description, which shows up on your create page. You can name the, just like in nodes, you can create, give it, say I want to call this department name or whatever, which we'll do in a minute. And then going through the checkboxes, you've got group creator automatically becomes a member. So when I create a new group, am I automatically added as a member of that group or not? Pretty straightforward. If I am a group creator, when I create the group, do I have to complete my membership? And basically what that means is, do I have an intermediate step to fill out that relationship entity as well as the group when I'm building the group itself? Does that make sense? So do I need to fill any additional fields out that describe my relationship as a user account to the group itself? And automatically configure an admin role. Do we create an admin role when we create the new group? By default, you only have outsider, member, and something else. We'll see it in a second. But this adds the admin role by default. Do we automatically give that role to the person who's creating the group? Yes or no? Sometimes you may want people to create the group and not be the administrator of that group for some reason. Totally legit. And also revisions. This actually comes from the patches that I mentioned earlier. This was not there in group core. You will need a patch if you want revisions in groups. Okay. So yeah, and just one thing to note is two things. Again, if you don't have any fields on that relationship entity for your membership, for your creator, person who's creating the group, you don't have any extra fields that says some sort of extra information, metadata about their relationship to the group, you want to uncheck this because it just adds an extra step that's just confusing. And also the button when you're creating a new group is defined by what combination of options you select here, which I thought is pretty cool. So it's like create department and become a member, or create department and complete your membership because I have to fill out these extra fields, or it's just create department because they're not going to give them membership. All right, so this is the content tab. The content tab is, so any node types that are already built out, those are automatically available as candidates if you have that group node module turned on. So you can click install, and installing one of these plugins, again, just creates that relationship entity that goes between that node type and your group. So you have a new intermediate relationship entity that you can define fields on, you can manage form display, you can do all kinds of stuff. So when I install one, again, I have this question of this two-step wizard. Do I want a two-step wizard when I create a piece of content of this, say, album, whatever this is, album type? When I create that within the context of a group, is there anything else I have to tell it about the relationship to this group? Or am I just filling out the node? Okay. If you're just filling out the node, you don't need any extra fields. You're going to uncheck that because there's no need to have that extra step in between, and it's confusing. The group membership plugin, you all notice that it says installed, and actually there is no uninstall option here because you can't remove membership. It makes no sense. You have to have a membership entity. Group menu is not on this screenshot, but it's similar in that you have this kind of creation screen and you have some checkboxes. One of the checkboxes when you're configuring group menu is whether to add a new menu when a group is created, which is super handy. Excuse me. And then you can also decide whether to add like a home link to that menu when it gets created as well. So there's two really handy additional options when you're installing the menu plugin. Uninstalling one of these plugins does not mess with the content itself. So again, just remember that those nodes have no concept of your group. They don't know anything about your group. Now there's, views, relationships, and things like that you can take advantage of, but the node itself doesn't care whether it's connected to this group or not. It's literally just being looked at through this group content entity. So uninstalling it doesn't delete it, it just gets rid of the relationship entity, and you can no longer connect that type of node or whatever to your group. And this little code sample is just a thing I found, which is, I think, pretty handy, and it shows kind of how well the API is built here. The developer experience is super simple. This is all the code that's needed to turn on the integration between commerce products and groups. So you have a commerce product entity. If you had this little snippet in a class, which extends the group content enabler base, that's literally all it takes to turn on. I'm sure there's more to it, but you get the idea. It's as simple as that. You're extending the current available group content types. Real quick on permissions. Again, you have anonymous, which is obviously your anonymous visitors, your outsiders, so people that are on the site but are not members, member, and then whether you configure the admin role or not when you created that group type. And any additional roles here too. You can go to the roles tab, create any additional custom roles you want within your group type. For instance, on the one we're working on now, we have a content manager and a content creator. And so we have lots of workflow stuff that kind of says, okay, these guys can do these transitions and these guys can't. That's all within the context of the group. Yep, create as many group roles as you want. Some just suggestions for the permissions to tweak is you probably want everybody to be able to view the group, most likely. Maybe not. Probably don't want to allow your admin users to leave the group, maybe, I don't know. You have permissions for each group content type and the related entity. So you have add, edit, delete, any, and own. Just like you have for nodes in the node system and all the permissions in Drupal core permissions, this kind of has an additional set of permissions that says, okay, if I'm a member of this group, I can or cannot do these certain things to these certain content types that are connected to my group. View and view unpublished if you have this patch. Again, for each group content type. One thing which kind of trips me up sometimes is if I have been working on a site for a little while and I'm like, oh, I have a new content type I want to connect to my groups. And I click that install button and I configure it. That new group content entity, the permissions that are created for that are not automatically granted to your admin role for whatever reason. So they stay unchecked. So you just want to remember to visit that if you have any permissions problems, of course. So then this is the All Entities tab. And this is obviously what it sounds like. These are all the entities related to this group, regardless of type. You can create, when you click Add Existing, you can create group content for existing entities. So something that we know is already out there as a node, now I just want to kind of connect it to this group. I can do that, which is kind of neat because you can sort of share nodes between different groups if they actually literally need the exact same content. you can share them between your groups. But again, you have that relationship entity, so you can define what's different about why this node is in this group and why it's in this group. So you might have a note about how this node relates to this group. I don't know. I have yet to actually use this functionality, but I can see the utility of it. If there's no installed content types, it just defaults to the add a new member form. Add a new entity, obviously this is what it sounds like. You're creating a new related entity rather than connecting an existing one. And you do it in one step or two, depending on whether you check that checkbox. One thing you can't do is add new members from here. You can't create users and add them to a group from here. You can do that from elsewhere, but not from here. And you also have, notice, some separate tabs up there for members, content, menus, which just is the exact same thing, more or less. It's just only that entity type. Okay, demo time. So, let's see. So the first thing I want to look at from this, before we start diving into what you're seeing here, is the paragraphs and how we've used paragraphs here. So on my paragraph types page, you'll see the first thing, the very highest level, is this sections paragraph. So I can add sections to wherever. Maybe I can do this in a single block. I can add it to a content type. I can add it to a group itself. I just need a field that looks for section paragraphs types, and that's it. And then within that, I have 4 variations of this. So a 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, 4 column section. And within that, I have all these other different paragraph types which I can add to the content. So for instance, just looking at the fields on the 1 column section, there's literally one field here, field column 1. And all I'm doing here is saying which of those widgets, which I think is another one of our buzzwords in that talk, which one of those widgets can be added to column 1 in a 1 column setup. And so I'll have all of kind of my standard things here, like just a heading, maybe some plain WYSIWYG text box, some sort of list, an image, a video, some contacts, a CTA, but also this hero banner, which on my other ones is not present because a hero banner in a half of a column doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So this one will just have the same set minus the hero. All right, does that make sense? The other thing I've done outside of the 1 column is I've added a field which defines the sizing of those 2 columns. And in the background, I've just done some really simple pre-processing to say, well, if this is set to this, this is using a foundation theme. You can do this with Bootstrap or whatever. But I can just say, all right, if it's 50-50, then in my template for this 2 column paragraph section, then I want my classes to be 6 column, 6 column, versus if I choose 25-75, I want it to be 3 and 9. Thank you. 3 and 9, or 9 and 3, or 4 and 8, depending on which one you choose, right? One other thing we did on the site we're working on now, which I did not do on this demo, is there's an additional field for like, is this section full width? Is it like full bleed? Or is it content width? So is it restricted to kind of the content? But we just left this as simple as possible. One other thing we're doing a lot of is nesting paragraphs. So notice that on those column options, which blocks or widgets I can add, I have a, let's look at list, for instance. So list is its own paragraph type, but it consists of 3 other sub-paragraph types. One is a straight up just like list, bulleted list. Not this one. This is part of an additional level of layering. So we have a bulleted list up here. It's actually more clear if I go here. So my list on my paragraph type list is field list, and it has 3 types. I can do a bulleted list, a list with a single icon, or a list with an icon per item. Which is just, it's crazy powerful. It's so much, and it was actually much simpler to build than it sounds like. And maybe, I don't know if it even sounds complicated, but it's very simple to build. And even just, say, decoupling, separating out the fact that the list item itself, this bit here, list item with icon, is a sub piece of the one with a single icon or a per icon per item. So you have the option when you're creating, and so this is where I'll go back to here real quick. So let's look at this accounting department, for example. So when I'm editing, when I'm editing my group, I can add, say, in this one, like in this 2-column section, got it set up as 2575. Column 1, I've got a heading and some WYSIWYG. I'm going to add a list down below that. So now I want to add a list to my list block, and I have these 3 options, right? So I can add a single, list with a single icon, just choose these are actually just using Font Awesome in the background, and just whatever the key is in my available valid, what was it trying to say, values list, is going to give me the class, the class I need for, it'll be FA or FA dash whatever, then that's what gets spit out in the template, and so it just gets, and so this is just a single icon. Or I can add, and this is getting a little more into paragraphs, but that's okay because I did put that in my description. So hopefully you're here for some paragraphs action. Icon per item is a little bit, a little more flexible. I want to go like left arrow. And now this one I can choose on each item which icon I want, etc. Do one more since I clicked it. Oops. All right, so I'm just going to save it just as it is. I should have 2 sets of lists right below my existing heading and WYSIWYG text. Yeah, I shut everything else down thinking that would make it a little faster. Here we go. So you get the idea. So here's my first list, which is 2 items. I want the exact same icon for, but these I can choose per item. So again, nested paragraphs, crazy powerful. This one's actually using a similar thing. I'm going to switch gears just for a second and look at what's going on here and here. So remember I mentioned earlier how you can kind of use a combination of layout builder and this kind of paragraphs approach that I was talking about for customizing your pages and for your groups to kind of have a lot of flexibility on what shows up on their pages. When I edit this group again, notice I've got 2 regular fields, just like you're probably used to, if you're not a paragraphs person. You've got just your description, and then I've got this context field, which is actually a paragraph field as well, but it's just a single paragraph in a field dedicated to context on this group entity type, right? So we're talking about, boom, you've got context, which is a paragraph field, description, which is just a text, layout builder stuff we'll show you in half a second, and then you've got this just one field that handles all that paragraph stuff, right? So each paragraph gets rendered through templating, just normal Drupal twig stuff, but it's really, really powerful. But so the additional thing that's going on here is, since you have layout builder field, you know that layout builder has been turned on for this group type. So I've turned it on. I also have the ability for each group to customize the layout, but of course you have to give it some sort of kind of default setup. And all we've done here is just say, I want a 2-column thing at the top that has my description and my context at the top every time. So when I create a new group, I've always got this kind of standard top section. This could be anything, obviously. You could put whatever you want here and in whatever format you want. And you're using Layout Builder, you can add sections, add blocks, all this stuff. Anything you can do in Layout Builder, think about it. It's wide open. And then I just have this one field for all my sections. But maybe, you could do something like, pre-description sections and post-description sections, and have 2 different sets of those kind of sectioned off nested paragraph stuff that we're just messing with. And you could have, you can do all kinds of things, I guess is the bottom line. You can literally do just about anything with this combination of things. The one last thing that we haven't seen that you can do would be like, if I want to, see this is the layout for all groups. So if I go back to my accounting group, I can still go to my layout tab. Sorry, all department groups, not all groups. Just to be clear, that was obviously the configuration for the layout for department group type. And if I wanted to, I could add another block here. Now what I've done is just created one, again, super simple custom block type, which is literally a custom block type with one field on it, which is our list that we just finished looking at. So it's got the same setup as a list paragraph, but it's a block, and I can use blocks in here, right? So now I can go create a custom block. Now this is where it gets chankety, and I just realized this the other day. So my list. So if you didn't want it for some reason to be done through this paragraphs model that I showed you a minute ago, you could just start adding it through this way. And again, so it's sort of mimicking what you saw a second ago, but you'll see the UX is really weird. See? But it works. So I'm adding it, and I stuck it up here, I think. I could save it. And now I've overridden the content for this specific accounting page, but using blocks and custom blocks. So you're basically seeing all 3 of those things mentioned earlier. You got three options for doing this stuff. You got paragraphs, like super nested paragraphs, and really powerful like this sections kind of approach. You have fields that are directly on the entity, so your description and your context, stuff that you kind of want to have a fixed position maybe in your template. And then you can also just add all kinds of custom stuff here. I think I'm running out of time really quickly, so I'm going to move on. Just a summary of the demo. Let's get back to presenting here. So again, the paragraphs approach for customizing the content. You've got this kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 columns option. All these different paragraph types with nesting of some other subtypes as it makes sense. It's really powerful, but again, it creates complexity. So from the templating side, just prepare to kind of have your brain hurt a little bit once in a while. This paragraph experimental widget is so nice. There's a lot of cool things. That modal that popped up, that's coming from, rather than paragraphs classic as the widget, when you have a paragraph field, when you're editing the managed form display, you can choose this experimental version, which gives you cool stuff like, when I'm in edit mode on my node, does the paragraph show up completely opened up and see the whole thing? Do they show closed? Do they closed and show the nested things within it? Does it auto collapse? When I edit one, does it automatically collapse all the other paragraphs around it? Use the modal form. You can actually do alternate form display modes here. If you have, you want a default paragraph type, you can duplicate paragraphs, collapse all, edit all, and add above, which is kind of handy in some places too. These are the ones we looked at on the one column. So again, each column that we defined, each section column type, we defined allowed paragraph type. So we have the hero banner plus everything else in the one column, and the rest of them just all the basic widgets. Again, use nesting. It's super, super fun, powerful. Context I didn't show, but you have a contacts paragraph type, but then within that you have a multiple value field that has a single contact, and you keep just creating additional single contact paragraphs that attach to that. And same thing with lists we talked about. I think that's pretty cool. We're actually going to do 2 more types for them after we built this. They're like, ooh, what about images? Oh, great. So we'll build you a thing where you can add an image as your icon instead of just font awesome. Yeah. This is a quick just summary of what we saw. You've got the fields, the layout builder stuff. You have these kind of standardized fields at the top, and then the section stuff below, and also the ability to add additional customization directly in layout builder if you're overriding a single group. Okay, I gotta rush through this because I'm out of time. Problems you're gonna run into, especially when you get really complex. We've had a lot of problems, but lots of solutions. So we have some good developers on our team. You'll see lots and lots of patches from our team on group stuff. The two-step wizard, again, I think can be confusing sometimes when you hit edit and you're on one of these relationship entities. We really wish I had time to show you this, but if you click edit, you're literally just editing the relationship entity. And the node itself is sort of embedded. Screw it, we have time, I don't care. You have to see this because it's confusing if I don't. So here's a custom page. Now this is a whole nother content type that was enabled as group content, but all it has is this sections and all the nested paragraphs. That's the only way you can build one of these right now. But if I edit this, I'm literally just editing. You can see the URL will be group 1 content 7. That's the path for a group content entity, right? So it's this group, and this is the ID of the group content entity. So all I'm editing is the menu link, which I mentioned earlier. You have to have menu link to be able to stick this stuff in a menu so that it's actually subject to the rules of the group. Because the node doesn't know about the group. It doesn't care about your permissions. But the solution is very simple. Just use your contextual links for now. There's the node is basically embedded here. Just a quick groups type. So on this content tab we talked about earlier, you have all the content types that are enabled, manage fields. Again, you got your menu link field is the only thing on there, but when it comes to displaying the group content entity, all it does is show you, this is badly labeled and I've been meaning to submit a patch for this, but title is literally the node. So the node is a rendered entity just shown in the group content node. That's all you get. If you had additional custom fields, you could have a field day with that too. So you can get kind of fancy here. Okay, and we also actually created a custom module for this current project so that you wouldn't have to use the contextual links. We actually created one, like an additional tab. We renamed the edit tab to like edit menu link because that's the only thing that you get on that screen. We don't have any custom fields on the relationship entity. And then added a new link as a menu tab that says edit content, which is much more intuitive to the user to just be able to click that. I have to blow by some of this, sorry. Slides will be online. I had a feeling this would happen. We talked about menu links, revisions aren't supported. This one's fun. So menu link, when you configure it on the group type, you obviously, just like in your configuring your content types, you have to say which menus are available to this menu link field. So when you get into the whole like config export stuff, it really gets hairy because deploying them, this is where I get into this a little more. they're automatically created, so you have new menus. We have menus that are automatically enabled as available in the menu link field. But then when you export them, you don't necessarily want that because maybe you created some stuff locally that doesn't need to go upstream. And if they don't exist upstream, or if they do exist upstream because your creators created stuff in production, and you do config import upstream, guess what? Your menus go away. They completely disappear because you don't have that config in this menu link fields configuration. Config split solves this, and it's a lot of fun to configure and get that set up. Media browsing, there's no concept when you're browsing the media library. If you're adding like an image to a group or to a group content node, it has no idea about like, hey, these media assets, we've sort of established some sort of ownership for this image. It sort of only belongs to this group. Why can this other group see it? So we had to do a little view plugin to intercept the access handler for views to kind of look at what groups does this user have, etc. Finally, I think this is my last one before I get kicked out of here. Multilingual content moderation is really, really fun and tricky all at the same time. Especially with nested paragraphs, it really kind of gets really hairy really fast when it comes to translations and moderation and workflows. So just check back on the slide, look around in the issue queue. There's lots of work being done to make that better. Here's a whole bunch of links to other stuff about group module, including my talk from last year, which I recommend not watching because I was not as informed about the group module as I am now. So hopefully this one will be a lot better than that one. Feel free to watch and realize how far off I was. It wasn't terrible, but there are definitely some misstatements. Again, we're Mobomo, and we're hiring. Been told to tell that multiple times. And come see us at the table. Yeah, I guess we don't have any time for questions. Sorry.
You
can come ask them up here if you want.